Turn to Psalm 96. Psalm 96. When you have Psalm 96, go ahead and stand with me. We'll jump right into it here tonight. We're not going to spend a lot of time, honestly, doing background or context. A lot of the Psalms, whenever I've been learning this as I've been preaching, particularly through Psalm 119 on Sunday mornings at Emerald City, but a lot of the times we don't have a definite context for the Psalms. And in fact, sometimes there's a heading underneath it, that says who wrote it, maybe the situation. There's nothing like that for Psalm 96. But I can tell you this, it's part of what's called the enthronement Psalm. Some have called it that, attributing that God is king and that God sits on the throne. So with that in mind, you kind of get that vibe whenever we read it, whenever we preach it here tonight. So our text is going to be the first 6 verses. That's what we're going to preach. But because it's not very long, we're going to actually read it in its entirety. And I might reference parts of it later on towards the end. But Psalm 96 says this: "O sing unto the Lord a new song. Sing unto the Lord all the earth. Sing unto the Lord, bless his name, show forth his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the heathen, his wonders among all people. For the Lord is great and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Honor and majesty are before him, strength and beauty are in his sanctuary. Give unto the Lord, O ye kindreds of the people. Give unto the Lord glory and strength. Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Bring an offering and come into his courts. O worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Fear before him all the earth. Say among the heathen that the Lord reigneth. The Lord also shall be established, that it shall not be moved. He shall judge the people righteously. Let the heavens rejoice, and let the earth be glad. Let the sea roar, and the fullness thereof. Let the field be joyful, and all that is therein. Then shall all the trees of the wood rejoice before the Lord. For he cometh to judge the earth. He shall judge the world with righteousness, and his people with truth." With truth. I know how much a fan Pastor Joel is of my titles for sermons. And so the title of the message tonight is this: The X and Y of Missions. The X and Y of Missions. Letter X and then W-H-Y. Y. The X and Y of Missions. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for tonight. I thank you for Foundation Baptist Church, for our pastor who you have blessed with wisdom and with a tender heart, Lord, to know how to follow you. And that includes our place in world missions and our place with church planting here in the Northwest. Father, I pray that you would continue to bless this church with a heart and a vision and a burden to see souls saved. Lord, I pray tonight for this message that you know where I'm at, you know how I'm coming into the pulpit and how I'm so dependent upon you. And Father, I pray that you would please fill me with your Spirit. Please help this to be clear, help it to be encouraging and edifying, as I believe this passage is meant to be. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you for standing. You can be seated. Have you ever been involved with a task, but you didn't quite know where or when the finish line was? That ever happened to anybody? Ever been in a task and didn't quite know, I don't know when this is actually going to be done. I don't know when this is going to finish. You may not be able to tell from my physique and from our interactions with each other, but I did grow up in the country, in Texas, in the scorching summer heat and sun. And growing up in the country, as I mentioned, we had many, many tasks that had to be done, especially my grandpa, who is still alive to this day, and he loved giving us projects, whether it was mowing the yard or tilling the land or doing something to the effect of being outside in 110-degree weather, I mean, that's why I have almost no pity for Goldendale people. Whenever they're saying that they're dying, sorry. You won't get much sympathy here because I remember those days, and the hardest days, let me tell you, were the days that we didn't know exactly where we were going to stop. And that's because my grandpa didn't know when we were going to stop. It was just, we'll go until we can't. Especially spreading ant killer. I don't know if has anyone else in here ever spread ant killer? Okay, well, fire ant killers in Texas, about the worst job you can possibly do. And when you set out to do it, you get it on yourself. There's no way to not do it. And the idea of, I don't know when this is going to end, I don't know how far he wants to go, is daunting. It's daunting. But I also thought about this. How many, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many in here had a countdown for how many days were left in school? That was me. That was me. Day one of school, I mean, even into college, I had a literal countdown that I would each night mark a day off. And in fact, you go so far as to say, here's how far we have to go until the summer. Here's how far we have to go until spring break or fall break. And then there's the big one. How many days till graduation? Till graduation, that's the big one. Elijah, it's coming up. Anna, it's coming up. Countdown for how many days? What about this? Counting how many laps around the track. I try to run. I try to go out and do something to stay somewhat in shape. And the Lord blessed. I live literally across the street from the West Seattle track and field, so I can go over there anytime and run. And I cannot shake. I have tried everything I know to do to not be the guy who's counting, okay, I'm a quarter of the way through this lap, a fifth of the way through this lap. I mean, I've tried listening to music. I've tried praying, talking. Cannot do it. I cannot shake the fact of saying, okay, halfway there, because it's just ingrained in me to know that's the finish line. That's where I have to get to. And what about this one? Savings goals. You ever have a thermometer maybe on a board where if we can get to this point, we can get a new family car. Or we can get to this point, we're going to Disney World. Whatever the case may be, it's easier, it is more satisfying whenever you know what the end goal is in any task. In any task. Let me tell you, as a pastor, even as an individual, I've felt kind of a disconnect when it comes to missions. And let me explain what I mean by that. I mean, we know what to do, and we even know how to do missions. We do. I mean, Pastor asked me to preach here for the missions conference. What are you going to preach about missions that's new? Okay, you go, or you send, you give, and you witness. Okay, that we know what to do, and we know how to do it. But do we really know what the finish line is? How can we know, let me ask you this, how can you know you're making progress if you don't know what the goal is? How can you know that you're actually moving forward, that there's actually progress being made if you don't know what the goal is? And I found this to be the case. In order for any individual or group or church to make progress, you have to know where you're going, and you have to know your why. Your why. Pastor gave us a book a couple years ago for staff, and it's called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Famous book. It's been used for motivation in a lot of different settings and stuff like that. But the main message, the main thrust of the book is this. You won't move forward very long. You won't make it through the hard times, through the struggles, if you don't know why you're doing something. If you don't know what your motivation is, what is your why? So I want to ask you this tonight. In a missions setting, and by the way, this is right where we live. This is right here on the ground. Missions month, missions conferences, missions sermons, they're not just something that, well, it's missions time again. It's time to check this off our box for the calendar of the year. This is where we are, and I want to ask you, why keep giving? Why keep sending? Why keep going? Why keep having a church service outside? Or why keep having a church service where you have to come in and set up and tear down. And you have to come in and sometimes in the rain, unload stuff from the trailer and bring it back in. And by the way, it's missions month again. And pastor's talking about giving. And pastor's talking about, does he not realize that inflation is up 17%? And he wants us to give even more? Well, why do that? Why do that? No, I'm asking you legitimately, why? Why? You realize that Psalm 96 was written long before missions programs. Missions as we know it. It was written before missions programs. But my friend, listen to me. From the very beginning, God has been a missions-minded God. God has been a missions-minded God. Listen, if you pick up this book and you pick up this Bible and you say, man, the God of the Old Testament was just harsh and brought judgment and wanted to wipe out Israel's enemies, and that was it, my friend, you haven't read this book, because from the very beginning, the only reason he set up Israel and that he blessed Israel was that so all the other nations could look to them and say, listen, you know the true God. You know the God of the Bible. You know the God that is real, the God that is the creator. God has always been involved with missions. With missions. That's why it says in verse number 1, oh, sing unto the Lord a new song. Sing unto the Lord, what's the next three words? All the earth. Okay, right there. Period. We could call it quits. God, from the very beginning, he wanted all the earth to sing to him. That means no one's exempt. That means that there's no one in Bellevue who's exempt. There's no one in Roslyn or in Falls City or Preston or in Sammamish or in San Bernardino, or there's no one here on the planet who is exempt from God's plan of all people, of all nations, singing praise to him. So he said sing. You know, I looked up that word sing in Hebrew, and it's pronounced shor, and you know what it means? Sing. Like actually sing. Sing. I love sometimes the arguments that come back, the rebuttals to, you know that singing is a biblical mandate? That God really designed us to sing, and God created for us to sing. Well, Pastor AJ, I sing in my heart. Well, do you tithe in your heart? Do you come to church in your heart? No, I mean, and even the idea of, okay, sometimes in the Bible, the word conversation, in modern day America, conversation means two people having a conversation. Well, in the Bible, it means your broader method of living, your lifestyle, and that your conversation be blah, 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 blah. Singing is not the same thing. It's not, oh, Brother AJ, my lifestyle is unto the Lord. He means actually sing. I'm sorry he's not here tonight, but he would not mind me saying this at all. But I am so thankful for Brother Jeff Allard, who was with me this morning there in Seattle, and he will tell you unashamedly that he was not growing up a singer. He is not currently a singer. In fact, even today, we sang a new hymn for the church, and it was called Stepping in the Light, Stepping in the Light. Brother Jeff never heard it before, and I told him, I said, well, okay, I'm going to sing. You just jump in whenever you're ready. And you know what? As uncomfortable as he is with singing, and as maybe undeveloped or unskilled with singing, there we are out in the park, out for all the world to see, and it's basketball season, so there's people walking by all the time with their basketball gear, and here's Brother Jeff singing out, just singing. You know why he's singing? Sing unto the Lord a new song, a new song. The song should be new in that it should reflect a new event, a new experience. I like what Alan P. Ross said. Listen to this. He said, the reason the Psalms frequently call for a new song to be sung is that God's faithfulness is new every day. Making praise for him is inexhaustible. You won't run out. You won't sing all the hymns in the hymn book and say, okay, well, I've done my singing for a lifetime. I've done all that I need to do. No, the psalmist here is saying, sing unto the Lord a new song. Sing unto the Lord all the earth. God's intention, God's design was for all men to sing unto him, to give him praise. He says, verse number 2, sing unto the Lord, bless his name, show forth his salvation from day to day. Speaking of salvation, listen, that could be some recent victory, or it could be a national experience, or even some victory from the past. But you know, the fact that it uses the word salvation is pretty fitting. Pretty fitting, because if you are saved tonight, if you've been saved and washed in the blood of the Lamb, and you know that heaven is your home, there's no reason on this earth that you can't sing out. There's no reason on this earth that you can't sing and say, look at what the Lord has done for me. Look at what the Lord has done for us. It is appropriate, it is right to sing. I used to joke that I learned piano so that I would never have to song lead. Well, the Lord knew better. Because when you're outside and there's no piano, you are the song leader. But that's, you know what, it's been a good lesson. Because I need to sing. I need to sing. So point number one is simply this. All of creation is compelled to sing praise to the Lord day to day. Day to day. It's not a Sunday thing. It's not it's church time, I'm going to think about God. It is day to day. What song's in your heart? Listen, music's a big thing. I would dare to venture, I might be wrong about this, but I would dare to venture to say that every person in here listens to music during the week, not just on Sunday. What song's in your heart? That tells you a lot about what you're thinking about. It tells you a lot about where your heart is. But there's a problem. There's a problem with that verse, those verses, and that is this. Many don't know. Many don't know. When he says, sing unto the Lord all the earth, the problem is not all the earth knows to sing. The problem is not all the earth knows who to sing to or what to sing about. So he says in verse 3, declare his glory among the nations. Among the heathen, his wonders among all people. Okay, so the word glory refers to God's unparalleled importance. Unparalleled, that's what glory is. It's unparalleled importance revealed through his works. So, I don't know, this is just the way my mind works. I started thinking, who are some important figures in history? I mean, you would be hard-pressed probably to find somebody, especially here in the state of Washington, to find somebody who says, oh, so-and-so was more important than George Washington when it came to the American Revolution. No, I mean, it's universally accepted that he, as the leader, I personally believe God put him there for such a time as that, and God used him, and he was instrumental. He was so important at that time in history. But there's been other men. There's been other women. There's been people all throughout history who have been important figures. I think about Winston Churchill. Think about Thomas Edison. The man who, I don't know, maybe I think that's been a debate actually. Did he invent the light bulb or did Tesla? Either way, they're both big names now, but important in history. Henry T. Ford. If you enjoyed your car on the way here, said, Brother AJ, I'm not driving a Ford. No, but he was pretty instrumental in getting that assembly line going. There's been important figures in history, but you realize here what this idea is of declare his glory. The idea is this. No matter what glory these men have, no matter what glory you fill in the blank, any character in history has achieved, they pale in comparison to the glory that God deserves. They pale in comparison to the importance of his work, So he says, declare his glory among the heathen. Okay, now, Brother AJ, who are the heathen? Who's the audience? Canada. Or Mexico. Actually, literally, it means another nation. It means the people who are not Israelites. The people, one of the literal definitions for heathen is this, a foreign nation, Gentiles. Every person in this room, to the best of my knowledge, fits in that category. Declare his glory to those who do not know. To those who, as the Jews and as the Israelites were given the counsel of God, were given the law of God, they knew who God was. They knew who to give credit for all of creation. They knew who to give credit for bringing them out of Egypt and for setting them up and for providing them in the wilderness. But the psalmist said, listen, there's a group out there called the heathen. There's a group that's outside of this circle of ours that does not know, and they need to hear about his glory. They need his glory declared unto him. It says his wonders among all people. So to speak of the glory of God, therefore, is to speak of his wonders. And to tell of his wonders is to declare his glorious nature. To declare his nature. So, if that's what we're supposed to do, and church, you realize what that looks like? I'm not comparing us to Israel. I'm not saying the church is a replacement for Israel. But in this context, it would be those who are outside of these walls who do not know the glory of God, who do not know his works, who do not know that he sent his son to this earth to die for us. They need to hear. They need to hear his glory. They need to hear of his wondrous works. So if that's what we're supposed to do, then here's the question. Why? Why? And I dare to say, we've come to that every single missions conference, every single year, since before I've been born, of we need to go and to tell. And if we can't go, then we need to send. But what I'm asking you tonight is why? Why? Look at verse number 4. For. All right, so that's the first word. For is another way of saying because, or here's why. For the Lord is great and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. You realize there was an issue in the psalmist's day with false gods. There was a big issue in the psalmist's day. And I want to say this is David. It feels weird saying the psalmist over and over, but I don't know if it was David or not. So we're just going to stick with the psalmist. There was an issue in this day and time of false gods. And listen, it was everywhere. You walk down the street, false gods. You go into the marketplace, false gods. You go into a temple of any kind, and what are they serving? False gods. It's interesting to know that in any period in human history, in any part of the planet, there's been a couple of things that have been always the case. You know, some countries don't have Wi-Fi. Some countries don't have maybe the same customs that we do. But there's a couple of things that are the same with every single group of or cluster of people anywhere at any time. And one of those things is they always have some form of music. And two, they always have some form of worship. And Blaise Pascal, who I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about, but he said this quote, and it's really good. He said, "There is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of each man which cannot be satisfied by any created thing, but only by God, the Creator." He's saying there's a hole in every single heart, a hole that is God-shaped, that can only be filled by God. But you know what people have tried to do throughout all of human history in that day and in this day, right here, right now, is they've tried to fill it with something else. They've tried to fill it with some other God, with something else to worship, with something else to give their devotion to. You say, Brother AJ, no. Listen, if you look at America, if you look at where we're at, we've kind of entered this age of reason. We've entered this time in human history where really the problem is nobody's worshiping anything. Listen, my friend, that is false. That is not true, and here's why. The gods of today are right here. Someone put it this way. The gods of today are more in self than they are on the shelf. So you may not walk into your house or walk into your neighbor's house and they have a gold or a bronze statue that they kneel down to and that they worship on a daily basis. But listen, there are gods, there are American gods who consume us. Because you know what a god is? You know what an idol is? Is anything or anyone that you give more affection to, that you give more attention to than you give to God. That's an idol. There's no need to be complicated about this. There's no need to say, well, it has to be a certain dimension. It has to be made of a certain material. No, it can be absolutely anything, whether it be sports, which this church doesn't really seem to have a struggle with. But it could be sports. It could be your job. It could be your affection to accumulate more. Whatever the case is, if there is something on this planet that has more of your affection than God does, that's an idol. That's a false god. And what the psalmist is saying here is the heathen need to know Those who are outside of this circle need to know the glory of God because he is greater than them. Verse number 5 says this, "For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens." You realize that verse 5 is one of the greatest contrast in all the Bible? I mean it. Let's reread that. It's one of the greatest contrasts in all the Bible. He's saying, for all the gods of the nations are idols. Idols. You know what that word idol means? It literally means good for nothing. It means vain, empty. They are completely useless. But the Lord made the heavens. I like what Briggs said. He said, this is appropriate because these gods have done nothing for their people. The gods that they served did nothing for them. They could do nothing for them. And in reality, they are nothing. They have no real existence. They are no gods at all. Yet, that's where their heart lay. That's where their devotion was. That's what they worshiped. They worshiped false gods. So here's a basic principle. Are you ready? Whoever is the creator is superior. Whoever is the creator is superior. If man created and fashioned these idols, then he's superior to them. That sounds weird. If man made the idol, then man's superior to the idol, yet he worshiped them. You see how backwards that is? You see how against nature it is for man to come up with something and then give his devotion to it. God, however, created and fashioned us. Therefore, he is superior and is to be worshiped. Verse 6 says, honor and majesty are before him. Strength and beauty are in his sanctuary. You know why, among other things, God should be worshiped? Honor, majesty, strength, and beauty. That's what encompasses him. Whereas the idols are vain, they're empty, they're nothing. And therefore, we have the why. We have the why of missions. Again, I said we're not preaching the entire psalm, but the psalm has 3 ideas within it. The first 6 verses, they declare this: God is the creator. God made the heavens. God fashioned everything. He is the creator. And then verse 7 through 10 say this: he is the king. So not only is he the creator, but he is the king. Verse number 10 says, say among the heathen that the Lord reigneth. Listen, you can't reign unless you're the king. And my friend, he is on the throne even to this day. And man, that could be a whole other message in and of itself, because if he's on the throne, then you are not. But he is the king. So he is the creator. He is the king. And then finally, the last 3 verses, it's this: he is the judge. Creator, king, and judge. Therefore, if he is all 3 of those, you see, there's no separation of powers with God. Here in the United States of America, we have this thing called the separation of powers, which, by the way, if you're not thankful for that, turn on the news, because it was so wisely implanted here that we would have separations of powers. But my friend, it's not that way with God. He is the creator, he is the king, and he is the judge. Therefore, he should be worshiped. Therefore, if you try to go any other way, if you try to find satisfaction or life any other way apart from the creator, the king, and the judge, it's doomed to fail. It's completely doomed to fail. Yet that's the way the majority of the world is headed. I looked up I forget what it's called, but it's the national, what's the thing whenever you go and census, the national census of what is the world population. And if you turn there, you get the clock and how it's going up, and it's, I forget the actual rate, but 7.8 billion people on the face of this planet today. Most of whom, if you were to drop Psalm 96 in their lap, would not know who it's talking about, who don't know that there is a God. That's the why of missions. That's the why of Foundation Baptist Church. See, God did not save us. God did not save you to come join this church and be part of a social club until you get to go to heaven. The church is an active mission to go out and to reach others here in Jerusalem, here in your city, and then spread out to Judea, to Bellevue, to West Seattle, Samaria. I'm not sure what you're doing for Samaria. I imagine I might have an idea, but it's somewhere else in the country, in the world that we have, and then ultimately to the uttermost part of the earth. That's our why. That is why we exist, is to declare his glory among the heathen, to show his works to those who don't know. So that's the why. Brother AJ, what's the X? Here, I'm done with this. Simply put, missions is complete. You want to know what the finish line for missions is? You want to know what the goal is? You want to know how far to run, how much to save, how many days to cross off? Here it is. When every person in every country, in every corner of the earth, knows that God, the true God, is the most important person in existence, period. That's when missions is done. That's whenever we can say, look, we made it to the finish line. When every person in every country, in every corner of this planet knows that the Creator God is the most important being in existence, period. But in order for that to happen, those who know him must make him known and not be given to false idols. See, here's a question. Is God God in your life? Is God God in your life? Brother Jay, we're saved. I'm looking around the audience tonight. There's no one that I know of here who's not called on him and who has made him God of their life. So we've all done that. We're settled. We've got that part covered. But listen, is it not possible that there's people right here under the sound of my voice who know God, who know his works, who know his glory, yet are given over to false idols, yet who have given their heart to something else? Your affection, your attention, your devotion doesn't lie with God. If somebody were to look at the schedule of your week and they were to skip over Sunday and Wednesday night, they would have no idea that you're a Christian. They would have no idea that you know the God of heaven, because nothing about you thinks about him. Nothing about you is obsessed with him. Listen, God fully intended that whenever he saved you, that he became the center point for your life. That he became the king. He became the ruler. He is the judge. He is the one in charge of your life. And listen, if we're going to go out and spread the gospel to the corners of the earth, if we're going to be busy about missions, then we can't do that if we're given over to false idols the same way those who don't know him are. It won't work. The job of going, sending, giving, reaching can never be done by a people whose lives are under idol worship, the same as those they're trying to reach. I made an appointment the Saturday before I headed out to New Mexico with Le Schwab Tires. And hopefully you might know where this is going. I noticed several weeks back that my back left tire was constantly going low. It was constantly getting flat. Not like overnight, not super quick, but just gradually. Over time, all my tires should be at 35 PSI all the time, or at least whenever they're cold. And the one in my back left was constantly going down. It was actually Brother Jeff who pointed it out to me and said, hey, your tire looks a little low. Pulled out the tire gauge, pressed it in, about 20, a little bit lower than that. And that was the day I was supposed to drive up to Bellingham. So you don't want to drive to Bellingham and get a blowout in your Chevy Equinox. So what? And I put air in it. I noticed about a week later, it was going down again and again and again. So finally, last Saturday, before I headed out to New Mexico, I went and put some air in the tire, and I finally noticed that back towards the very back inside of the tire, there's a little screw that's in just deep enough to let out just a little bit of air. And you know how that is, that if you take it out, it's going to explode. It's going to be bad. So you have to keep it in and kind of hope that you can get to the tire place in order to fix it. But in the meantime, you have to keep pumping it up and pumping it up. It's never going to fix itself. And listen, church, if we find ourselves in this cycle of, man, we need missions month, we need missions night once a month to get pumped up again so that we can get fresh air in our lungs, we might need to do some serious evaluation about that. We might need to see, is there something that's made a puncture that's causing a leak? If there's something in our heart that we've given more attention to than God, then listen, I'm telling you, that issue will not go away until it's addressed. That issue will not go away until it is fixed. And let me tell you, you go long enough, it could be dangerous. It could be super dangerous. You say, Brother AJ, well, 3 of the tires work. 3 of the tires are just fine. It's just one that has a hole in it. Listen, in order for the car, in order for the vehicle to move forward, in order for us to reach the X at the end of the finish line, we've got to be full. We've got to be whole. And we have got to have our attention nowhere else but where He has it. Otherwise, we're going to leak, and it's going to fail. But I'm so thankful for grace. I'm so thankful that whenever I've had holes and I've had areas in my heart that are leaking and where things aren't right, I can come to Him and say, God, You're the judge. The psalm goes on later on to say that He will bring righteousness into the earth. He's all about bringing in righteousness. And I can go to Him and say, Father, I want to be right with You. And that can happen. And church, there's no other way to go about missions than making sure we at home are first whole. That we at home first have things in line. Otherwise, how are we going to go reach those with the same problem that we have? Father, I thank You so much